signed fraction multiplication. So a lot of these topics here in the beginning of the course can be done using your calculator. This is one that can totally be done using your calculator. But to give you a little better understanding of the mechanics behind what's happening, let's kind of talk about what happens when we multiply signed fractions. There's two big ideas going on here. The first is if you're multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across. So you would multiply the numerators together and then put that over the denominators being multiplied together. The other idea you need to keep in mind is what happens when we multiply signed numbers. So if we multiply two positive numbers together, we're going to get a positive. If you multiply two negatives together, you're going to get a positive. If you multiply a positive and a negative together, you're going to get a negative, and same if you multiply a negative and a positive, you'll get a negative. So as long as you know how to multiply fractions, which is just multiplying straight across, and you understand the rules of multiplying negative numbers together, you're going to be fine on this. Here I see that I'm multiplying a negative and a negative, so I know my answer is going to end up being positive. I'm going to ignore the negative signs now because I know that my answer is going to be positive. From there, I can just look at this as 3/7 times 1/9. Now, I can simplify this a little bit because I know that 3 and 9 share a common factor, so you're looking for a number on the top to share a common factor with a number on the bottom. I know that they share a factor of 3. 3 goes into itself 1 time, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. So the way this gets rewritten, that 1 just kind of stays on top there, and then I'll multiply it by this one over 7 times 3. On top I have 1, and then on the bottom I have 21. That can't be simplified anymore, so my answer is 1 over 21. Let's go ahead and do another example. All right, once again, we have two negative numbers being multiplied together, which means our answer is going to come out to be positive. Now, -8 doesn't look like it's a fraction, but the number 8 can be written as 8 over 1. Any number is just itself over 1. I can do this with anything. -2 is -2 over 1. I'm just writing random numbers down here so that you can see you can put any number over 1 without changing it. So because I know my answer is going to be positive, I'm going to go ahead and ignore those negative signs. I'm going to write this as 8 over 1 times 5 over 2. I know that 8 and 2, one number on top, one number on bottom, share a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide both of those numbers by 2 and replace them. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we get 4 times 5 on the top, 1 times 1 on the bottom. 4 times 5 is 20. 1 times 1 is 1. Now, you can't leave your answer as 20 over 1 because that's not simplified all the way. Any number over 1 is just itself. It's the reverse direction of what we were talking about before. So this would just come out to be 20. Now you might have the question, what would have happened if I didn't do this step right here? And I think that that's important to talk about. So we would have had 8 over 1 times 5 over 2. And let's say we didn't think about simplifying. We have 8 times 5 on top over 1 times 2 on the bottom. 8 times 5 is 40 over 2, and that comes out to be 20. So you're going to get the same answer either way. Sometimes it's easier to simplify at this step. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference. In this case, it was straightforward either way. But because numbers can get big, if you can simplify at the beginning, it tends to be a little bit quicker. Let's do one last example. -3/5 times 7. So we have a negative, let me grab my pen, negative times a positive. We know that this is positive because there's no negative sign in front of here. If it was -3/5 times -7, that would mean that we had two negatives, but there's no negative sign there, so he's positive. A negative times a positive is going to give us a negative. That means that our answer is going to be negative. I'm going to put that negative sign out front, just like it already is. We have 3/5 times 7 over 1. We have -3 times 7 over 5 times 1. There's no simplification that can happen here, so I'll just keep going. 3 times 7 is 21. 5 times 1 is 5. So my final answer is negative 21 over 5, which cannot be simplified any further. One thing to note here, when we're talking about negative signs and fractions, there's 3 different ways we can write the same number. So negative 21 over 5 is the same as negative 21 over 5 or 21 over negative 5. So this negative sign is very malleable. You don't put it in twice. So some people think, oh, if there's a negative on the outside, that means I should write it as negative 21 over negative 5, and that's not true. That would actually come out to be positive 21 over 5, which is not what we want. You just get to decide where you put it. Most of the time, we put it either out here or on top, but you could put it on the bottom and still have it be completely valid. All right, that's all I have to say on this topic. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great.